What if one short story could help you become more confident, more fluent, and more inspired? Let's find out. Welcome back to LMJ English. Today's video isn't just a story, it's a roadmap. Follow Arian's powerful journey from self-doubt to self-mastery as he learns the 12 essential life skills that schools never teach, but life always demands. You're serious about growing your English skills and your mindset. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a new story that could change the way you think, speak, and live. Personality development is essential. Arian had always believed that success was a straight road. Study hard, score. Well, and opportunities would come knocking. That's what everyone said. Parents, teachers, even the school principal during morning assemblies. For years he followed that advice without question. His notebooks were always neat. His homework was always on time. His grades were always high. He knew algebra, Newton's laws, and how to diagram every organ in the human body. But there was one thing he never learned: how to be seen. It wasn't until college that Arian discovered the real world didn't care about perfect attendance or well-organized notes. In his first group project, he tried to speak, but his voice barely came out. In a networking event, he stood in the corner, pretending to scroll through his phone. During a class presentation, his hands trembled so much that he dropped his cue cards. That night he asked himself a question that shook him. Why am I invisible when I've done everything right? The answer came slowly, not from a textbook, but from life. He realized that schools had taught him everything except how to express himself. No one had explained how to be confident, how to handle fear, or how to influence others with just his words and presence. There had been no class on how to speak so people listen, no exam on how to walk into a room with purpose. The truth hit hard. A strong personality isn't a bonus, it's a necessity. Determined to change, Arian turned his awkwardness into action. He started small. He practiced smiling at strangers, even when it felt uncomfortable. He forced himself to ask questions during lectures, even if his voice shook. He studied great speakers, not just what they said, but how they stood, how they paused, how they looked people in the eye. He spent hours practicing in front of a mirror, trying to find that spark that others seemed to have naturally, and then one day it happened. During a seminar, he stood up and shared his thoughts clearly and confidently. He didn't stutter. He didn't freeze. People clapped, not because his answer was perfect, but because he had finally shown up. From that moment, things changed. People listened to him. They remembered his name. They wanted to hear what he had to say. And all of that came not from a degree, not from a certificate, but from a personality he had built brick by brick with courage and consistency. Now, Arian mentors others. He tells them, it's not about being born confident, it's about becoming confident. One choice, one habit, one story at a time. Because personality is not about having the loudest voice in the room. It's about having the quiet strength to own who you are and the boldness to grow into who you can become. The Internet is a free resource. After Arian's turning point, in college, when he realized that personality development was the missing piece, he became hungry for growth. But there was one big problem. He didn't have the money to join those expensive self-improvement courses or attend exclusive seminars that promised success. For a few weeks, he felt stuck again. Was growth only for the rich? Was confidence something only privileged students could afford to build? But one afternoon, while scrolling through his phone with frustration, he had a moment of clarity. It was almost poetic. He was lying there, overwhelmed by his limits, while holding unlimited knowledge in his hands. The internet. It had always been there. But like most people, Arian had used it more for entertainment than education. Now he saw it differently, not as a distraction, but as a treasure chest of possibilities. He whispered to himself, "If I have a smartphone and Wi-Fi, I have no excuse." That night he deleted every app that wasted his time. Gone were the endless scrolling sessions, the gossip pages, the mindless video reels. Instead, he installed a vocabulary app, subscribed to English learning channels, saved playlists of motivational speeches and TED Talks. He even created a folder named Upgrade My Life. It was the beginning of a quiet revolution. Each morning, while others slept, Arian started his day with a 10-minute podcast on communication. On his walks to class, he listened to audiobooks on confidence, mindset, and money. He watched free courses on platforms like YouTube and Coursera, learning things no one had ever taught him in school, like how to manage his time, how to present ideas, or how to ask questions without fear. And slowly it started to show. He spoke with more clarity. He stood straighter. He started answering confidently in class, not to show off, but to share. People began asking him, "Did you take a course somewhere?" He smiled because the truth was his classroom had no walls, no professors, and no tuition, just a willing heart and a working Wi-Fi connection. But Arian also noticed something else. While he was transforming his life, most of his friends were still stuck in digital quicksand, scrolling, comparing, procrastinating. That's when it hit him. It's not about access, it's about awareness. Everyone had the same tools. The only difference was how they chose to use them. The internet can be your greatest teacher or your greatest trap. It can feed your mind or drain your energy. Arian made a vow that day. "I will not let the tool that could change my life become the thing that wastes it." From that moment on, his phone was no longer a distraction. It was a weapon, a library, a mentor, a gateway to a better version of himself. Communication skills matter most. By the time Arian graduated from university, he had learned many lessons, but none more powerful than this. Knowledge opens doors, but communication walks you through them. After working on his personality, improving his mindset, and replacing doubt with discipline, Arian felt a quiet confidence building inside. But there was still one major gap, a gap that showed up every time he entered a room full of people. Every time he needed to express an idea, or simply introduce himself without shrinking back. Despite all his growth, Arian struggled to communicate clearly. His ideas were strong, his intentions sincere, but his words often got lost somewhere between his heart and his voice. And so, people misunderstood him. Some thought he was shy, others thought he was unsure. But the truth was simple. He had never been taught how to speak in a way that made people listen. He began to study great communicators, not famous ones on stages, but everyday people who seemed to naturally earn respect when they spoke. He realized something important. Good communication isn't about big words, it's about connection. And that connection begins with something as small yet powerful as eye contact. Arian practiced this every day, at the grocery store, in class, with his family. He trained himself to hold eye contact, not with tension but with calm curiosity, Just 3 to 5 seconds. No staring, no shifting nervously, just being present. And with that simple act, something incredible happened. People started responding differently. They smiled more, they engaged deeper, because eye contact isn't just about the eyes, it's about being seen. Next, Arian worked on his voice. He had always spoken either too fast, trying to rush through conversations, or too softly, unsure if he was worth hearing. But now, he learned the power of pace. He discovered that pausing before an important point made people lean in. Slowing down when explaining something made people understand more. Speeding up slightly added energy to his message. He wasn't just talking anymore, he was communicating. But the real transformation came when Arian mastered listening. True listening. Not waiting to speak. Not thinking of what to say next, just listening. He gave people his full attention, nodding gently, holding eye contact, pausing before replying. And the results were undeniable. People began to trust him. They opened up more. His conversations didn't just sound better, they felt better. Finally, Arian focused on clear expression. He stopped trying to impress with fancy words. He started focusing on impact. If a 12-year-old can understand what I'm saying, he told himself, then I'm doing it right. He practiced storytelling. He simplified complex thoughts. He spoke not just with logic, but with emotion. And that's when he noticed it. People weren't just hearing him, they were feeling him. Arian's journey wasn't about becoming the loudest person in the room. It was about becoming the clearest, the most authentic, the most connected. And that, he discovered, was what truly powerful communication looked like. Body language speaks loudly. Arian had come a long way. He could now speak with more clarity. He had ideas worth sharing, and slowly his confidence began to rise, but still, something felt missing. Sometimes, even when his words were right, people seemed distracted. They nodded politely, but their eyes drifted. Their interest faded. And Arian once again felt invisible. That's when he started paying attention not to what people said, but to how they moved. During a leadership seminar on campus, he noticed the speaker before she even opened her mouth. She walked onto the stage with a presence so powerful that the entire room quieted. Her back was straight, her shoulders relaxed, her hands expressive, but calm. Every gesture had meaning. Every pause had power. She hadn't said a word, and yet Arian already respected her. And then it clicked. Body language wasn't decoration, it was communication. Back in his dorm, Arian stood in front of the mirror, not to fix his hair, but to study his posture. He saw the slouch in his shoulders, the downward gaze, the nervous tapping of his fingers, all silent signals of doubt. No wonder they don't take me seriously, he thought. I'm not even standing like someone who takes himself seriously. From that day on, he began to retrain not just his thoughts, but his entire physical presence. He practiced the posture of leadership, feet shoulder-width apart, back tall, shoulders naturally pulled back, and chin lifted just slightly. He noticed how this alone changed how he felt. He wasn't even speaking yet, but already he felt more alert, more grounded, more in control. Then he worked on gestures. Arian used to keep his hands in his pockets or hidden behind his back. Now, he allowed them to move freely, but with purpose. When he explained something, he used open palms to show honesty. He mirrored subtle movements to build trust. He avoided crossing his arms unless he was truly thinking. He understood now. Your hands tell your truth before your mouth does, and most importantly, he watched his face, the way he smiled, the way his eyebrows moved when he was curious or engaged. He practiced relaxed eye contact, not too intense, but steady. He leaned in when people spoke, showing interest without even speaking. Slowly, his body became fluent in a new language, the language of presence. Arian's transformation wasn't instant, but it was powerful. During group discussions, people began turning toward him. In presentations, his calm movements and confident stance held attention like never before. He didn't just sound like a leader, he looked like one, and that made all the difference. Because the truth is, people judge you in the first few seconds before you say a single word. If your body says, "I don't believe in myself," your words won't matter. But if your presence says, I am grounded, I am worth listening to," then people will lean in long before you open your mouth. Arian didn't just learn how to speak. He learned how to stand, and in doing so he discovered one of the most underrated truths in life. Before people hear your voice, they hear your posture. Money management determines freedom. In the eyes of his friends, Arian looked like he had things figured out. He was confident, improving his communication, even starting to attract attention during class presentations and group discussions. His part-time job paid enough to keep his fridge stocked and his weekends fun. On the outside, life looked good. But late at night, when he opened his banking app and stared at the nearly empty balance, a quiet panic always settled in. How can I be working so hard, he wondered, and still be broke at the end of every month? It wasn't just the occasional shopping spree or takeout order. It was something deeper, a lack of awareness. No one had ever taught Arian how to manage money. School had taught him how to calculate compound interest, but never how to apply it in real life. He knew how to solve algebraic equations, but not how to create a personal budget. It was like walking into a jungle with a textbook about trees, but no map, no compass, no survival tools. Everything changed the day he watched a financial literacy video titled, "It's not how much you earn, it's how you manage what you have." Those words shook him. Arian began to see his income not as a reward, but as a responsibility. So he did what he always did when life demanded more of him. He studied, practiced, and applied. And the first principle he discovered was so simple, it almost felt magical. The 50-30-20 rule. He wrote it down in his journal like a sacred formula. 50% for needs: rent, food, electricity, transportation, non-negotiables that kept life running. 30% for wants: a movie night, a nice shirt, an occasional meal with friends. Comfort, but not chaos. 20% for savings and investment, the future, the freedom fund, the promise to his future self. Arian decided to reverse his old habits. Instead of spending first and saving what was left, he began saving first and spending what remained. It was hard at first. Watching his friends buy the newest gadgets, go on spontaneous trips and order food without checking prices, it triggered old insecurities. But then he remembered something he read: "Rich is loud, wealth is quiet." While others were busy spending to look successful, Arian was building something quieter, but stronger: stability, confidence, control. But managing money wasn't just about budgeting. It was about understanding the enemy: debt. Arian had almost applied for a credit card. It seemed harmless, just a way to manage emergencies, right? But as he dug deeper into financial education, he realized something frightening. Most debt wasn't financial. It was emotional. People went into debt trying to prove they were doing okay. They used borrowed money to buy status, to mask insecurity, to chase dopamine. Arian didn't want that trap, so he made a rule. If I can't buy it twice, I won't buy it once. Instead of buying a new phone, he learned how to take better care of the one he had. Instead of dining out every weekend, he learned to cook 2 signature meals at home. He stopped asking, "Can I afford this?" and started asking, "Will this bring me closer to freedom or further from it?" Then came his most powerful discovery: investing. Even with just a few dollars a week, Arian started putting money into a beginner-friendly mutual fund. He learned about compound interest, how money, when given time and consistency, could grow. Like a tree from a tiny seed. He ran the numbers. Just $100 a month invested with a 10–12% return could become hundreds of thousands in 20 years. I may not be rich now, he thought, but I'm buying my freedom in advance. Slowly but surely, his relationship with money transformed. He no longer saw it as something that slipped away. He saw it as a tool, a partner, a quiet force that, when managed wisely, could help him build the life of his dreams, not tomorrow, but starting today. And one day, as he looked at his small but growing investment portfolio, Arian smiled, not because he had a lot, but because for the first time he felt in control. He didn't need to impress anyone. He didn't need to compete. He just needed to stay disciplined, stay aware, and stay on the path. Because now he understood. Money doesn't create freedom. Managing money does. Survival skills are for everyone. Arian had been growing in ways he never imagined. Mentally, emotionally, even financially. But one rainy evening, something happened that reminded him of a truth too many people forget. All the success in the world means nothing if you don't know how to stay safe when life gets real. It started with a car ride. He was traveling with 2 classmates to a weekend seminar in a nearby town. The sky darkened, the rain thickened, and suddenly, thud, a loud noise erupted under the car. The vehicle jerked, swerved, and rolled to a stop on the side of a deserted road. No signal, no traffic, no help in sight. Inside the car, panic filled the air. One friend started dialing random emergency numbers. Another kept repeating, "What do we do? What do we do?" Arian felt his heart racing. But in that moment of chaos, one terrifying question echoed through his mind. Why don't we know how to handle this? None of them knew how to change a tire. None of them had a flashlight or a first aid kit. None of them knew if they were even on the right road. They had been raised in classrooms and computer labs, but never trained for real-life situations. That night, a deep sense of responsibility was born inside Arian, not just for knowledge or money, but for preparedness. When he got home safely, he made a new kind of to-do list, not for exams or deadlines, but for life. First on his list, basic first aid. He signed up for a free Red Cross workshop and learned how to handle emergencies that could happen anytime, anywhere. How to stop bleeding using a t-shirt, how to perform CPR, how to assist someone who's choking. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't academic, but it was real. The kind of skill that can mean the difference between helplessness and saving a life. Second, navigation without GPS. Arian realized how dependent he had become on technology. If his phone died, he was lost, literally. So he started learning how to read a paper map. He studied the sun's position to understand directions. He practiced using landmarks and memory instead of screens. Slowly he became more aware of his surroundings, and more confident in unfamiliar places. Third, emotional control in emergencies. Because the truth is, most people don't freeze from lack of knowledge, they freeze from fear. Arian began practicing breathing techniques and mental checklists to stay calm in stressful moments. When everyone else is panicking, he told himself, I want to be the one who brings clarity. It wasn't long before his mindset changed. He didn't walk around in fear. He walked around prepared. A small first aid kit in his bag, a flashlight in his glove compartment, emergency numbers written down on paper, simple actions but powerful ones. Because now Arian didn't just feel smart, he felt capable. And that's when it hit him. Survival skills aren't for adventurers or army soldiers. They're for students, workers, dreamers, for everyone. In a world that teaches you how to get good grades, Arian was learning how to stay alive, stay calm, and help others in moments that truly mattered. He understood something few people his age did. When crisis comes, your degree won't save you. But your preparedness might etiquette earns respect. By this point, Arian had built a foundation many people never reach. He could speak clearly, stand confidently, manage his money, and even navigate emergencies. But there was still one lesson waiting for him, one that didn't require intelligence, wealth, or talent, but made a world of difference: how to treat others with respect. It started during a dinner invitation. Arian had been invited to a formal gathering by a mentor from his internship, a small event with business professionals, professors, and rising students. He dressed well, arrived on time, and felt prepared to speak confidently if asked. But as soon as the dinner began, he realized something. He didn't know the rules. Should he place the napkin on his lap? Was it rude to start eating before others? How should he respond when someone passed him a dish he didn't want? What if he accidentally made a loud sound while chewing? Every small action suddenly felt massive, and the last thing he wanted was to be remembered for the wrong reasons. That night, Arian learned an important truth. Manners aren't about being fake, they're about being thoughtful. When you show respect for others, they naturally return it. And in a world full of loud voices, being the person who speaks gently, listens carefully, and moves with grace makes you stand out in silence. So, like always, Arian made it a mission to learn. He began with polite speech, not just saying please and thank you, but learning how to say them. He trained himself to say, "Could you please help me with this instead of do this for me?" He replaced what with, "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it?" He realized that the tone of his voice could build bridges or burn them. Next, he practiced active respect in daily life, holding doors open, smiling at strangers, saying good morning with intention, noticing when someone was struggling and offering to help, even if it was something as small as carrying a heavy bag. He didn't do these things to impress anyone. He did them because he was becoming someone who valued people, not just their titles or roles, but their presence. And of course he studied table manners. At home he practiced eating without speaking with food in his mouth. He learned to wait until everyone was served before digging in. He chewed quietly, kept his elbows off the table, and never reached across someone's plate without saying, "Excuse me." They were tiny habits, but they sent a clear message. I respect you enough to be mindful around you. People began noticing. His professors described him as well-composed. His peers started bringing him to formal events. And strangers, especially older adults, often said, "It's rare to see someone your age with such grace." But Arian knew it wasn't about being special. It was about being intentional. Because etiquette isn't a performance, it's a practice. It's not about pretending to be polite. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally treats others with kindness, humility, and respect. In a world chasing attention, Arian was earning admiration, not by shouting but by showing, and quietly, powerfully, he was becoming the kind of man who others were proud to stand beside. Coding is a superpower in the digital age. It all began with a single error message. Arian had never thought of himself as a tech person. He admired people who could build apps, design websites, or talk confidently about machine learning. But deep down, he assumed coding was a distant world reserved for genius programmers in dark rooms typing at lightning speed. He was more into stories, communication, personal growth. Code? That wasn't his thing. Until one frustrating afternoon at his internship. He had been assigned a repetitive data task, manually collecting hundreds of statistics from various websites to compile into a monthly report. It was mind-numbing. Click, copy, paste, repeat. And then it happened. He accidentally deleted 2 hours of work with one wrong keystroke. That was the moment something inside him snapped, not out of anger, but out of awakening. There has to be a better way, he whispered to himself. Later that evening, a teammate mentioned casually, if you knew a bit of Python, you could automate that whole task in under 10 minutes. Arian stared at him. Python? Like the snake? He laughed, but something stirred. That night he opened his laptop and typed into the search bar, "Can a complete beginner learn coding for free?" The results flooded in. Tutorials, courses, articles, videos. He clicked one, then another. And as he listened, something became clear. Coding wasn't just for tech experts anymore. It was for anyone who wanted to create, automate, and solve real problems. Arian began small. His first goal was simple: write a Python script that could pull data from a list of websites and organize it into a table. It took him hours. He watched the same tutorial 4 times. He Googled every error. But then it worked. The task that once took him an entire day now took less than a minute. He stared at the screen in disbelief. "I just built a robot," he smiled. "A tiny one." But still, he didn't stop there. The more he learned, the more powerful he felt. Next came HTML and CSS, the languages behind every website. Arian was fascinated. He learned how a blank white page could transform into something beautiful with just a few lines of code. He created his own digital journal, then a portfolio, then a landing page for a side project. He discovered that websites were like living art, function with form, logic with design. And then came JavaScript, the language that made things move, react, and respond. Suddenly, Arian could build buttons that clicked, forms that validated, and pages that danced. It wasn't just technical, it was creative. Coding, he realized, wasn't about memorizing commands. It was about thinking differently. It was about turning ideas into action with nothing more than a keyboard and curiosity. But even more than the code, it was the confidence that changed him. He no longer waited for others to build things for him. If he needed a solution, he created it. When his team wanted a form to collect feedback, Arian built one. When his cousin needed a simple website for her small bakery, Arian made it. When his club needed to organize registrations, he automated the system. And for the first time in his life, he felt what it meant to be digitally independent. He wasn't just learning coding. He was learning control over his ideas, his productivity, his future. In a world that was becoming more automated, more technical, more online by the second, Arian had gained a secret weapon, While others consumed the digital world, he was beginning to shape it. He still wasn't an expert. But that wasn't the goal. He had tasted the truth. Coding is not just for developers. It's for dreamers, for creators, for students like Arian who don't want to be left behind but want to lead. And as he sat down one night building a passion project, a small app that helped students track their personal development goals, he smiled and whispered to himself, "I used to think coding was out of my league. Now I see. It's my bridge to everything I want to build." Marketing is the skill of influence. At first, Arian thought marketing was only for people in business, people who sold products, ran companies, or worked in advertising agencies. But the deeper he went into personal growth, the more he began to see a pattern. The people who succeeded weren't always the smartest. They were the best at presenting themselves, their ideas, and their value. Whether it was the confident student who got the internship, the artist who gained thousands of followers, or the entrepreneur who sold a simple idea and turned it into a movement, there was one thing they all had in common. They knew how to market themselves. That realization hit Arian one day when a classmate got selected for a highly competitive leadership program. Arian's qualifications were just as strong, maybe even stronger, but during the interview, the other student had shared a story, painted a vision, and left an impression. Arian hadn't. "I need to learn this," he thought. "Not to fake anything, but to make my value visible." So he started where he always did, by studying. But this time he wasn't just learning how to sell a product, he was learning how to sell an idea, a message, a story, even himself. He began with personal branding. Instead of just calling himself a hard-working student, Arian started asking deeper questions. What do I stand for? What makes me different? How do people feel when they interact with me? He updated his online profiles, cleaned up his social media, created a digital presence that reflected who he was becoming, not just who he had been. He shared his learning, journey, his small wins, and even his failures, with honesty and intention. People began to notice. His posts started getting replies from people he admired. Classmates reached out for advice. A recruiter even messaged him about an opportunity, not because of a resume, but because of a story he had shared online. That's when Arian fell in love with the second tool of influence, storytelling. He realized facts may convince, but stories connect. So instead of saying, "I learned time management," he said, "There was a time I was failing classes because I didn't know how to manage my day. One simple habit saved me, writing down just 3 priorities each morning. That small change, it turned my entire life around, and suddenly people weren't just listening, they were remembering. Because a story has a heart, not just a headline." Next, he dove into social media marketing, not for fame, not for followers, but for impact. He learned how to use platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and even a personal blog to share knowledge, ask meaningful questions, and build a community around self-development. He discovered how hashtags could expand reach, how visuals could support ideas, and how consistency builds trust. But what shocked him most was this: marketing wasn't about manipulating people. It was about serving them, by helping them feel seen, heard, and understood. In job interviews, he no longer listed his achievements. He told stories. In networking events, he didn't try to impress. He tried to connect. Even in friendships and daily conversations, he began to see that every interaction is a chance to share value, build trust, and create connection. Arian no longer saw marketing as a skill reserved for sales teams. He saw it as a life tool, one that would serve him in job applications, relationships, leadership, and maybe even one day, his own business. And one afternoon, while helping a friend prepare for a big presentation, Arian smiled and said, "You're not selling your project. You're sharing your why. That's what people remember." Because in the end, marketing isn't about selling products. It's about inspiring people to believe in what you stand for. Time management is everything. There came a point when Arian was juggling more than ever before, between his part-time job, coding practice, building a personal brand, helping friends with small tech projects, and staying on top of his university work. His days were full, but his mind, overwhelmed. He found himself constantly busy yet strangely unproductive. Tasks were piling up. Deadlines felt tighter. The to-do list grew faster than his energy could keep up. He kept telling himself, "I'll get it all done, eventually." But deep down he knew something was off. One evening, after missing an important group meeting, Arian sat on the edge of his bed and asked himself the hardest question of all: am I doing what matters, or just doing more? That question changed everything. The next morning he decided to treat time as seriously as money. After all, time is the only resource you can never earn back. From that day forward, Arian made a commitment to master time management, not by squeezing more into his day, but by learning to prioritize what truly mattered. He began with a simple rule: do less. Do it better. Instead of writing long to-do lists, Arian chose 3 high-impact tasks every morning. Just 3. These weren't urgent errands. They were meaningful actions that moved his life forward. Whether it was improving his portfolio, applying for a scholarship, or spending an hour learning a new skill, he focused only on what mattered most. Next, he learned the power of saying no. It wasn't easy. Arian had always been the kind of person who wanted to help everyone, attend everything, and never disappoint. But now, he realized something powerful. Every yes to distraction is a no to my future. He began, protecting his time like a treasure. He turned off notifications. He created focus hours where his phone stayed in a drawer, silent and out of reach. He started using digital calendars to block time for rest, reflection, and real work. And slowly the fog in his mind began to clear. But the biggest shift came when he discovered the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle. It said that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. Arian applied it everywhere. He realized that 80% of his progress in coding came from 20% of the exercises he focused on deeply. 80% of his social growth came from 20% of the conversations that mattered most. 80% of his peace came from 20% of the habits he had quietly built into his day, like journaling, morning planning, and evening walks without his phone. He stopped glorifying being busy. He started honoring being present. Time, he learned, wasn't just about hours and minutes. It was about energy, attention, and clarity. And something beautiful happened. He started sleeping better. He stopped rushing through meals. He found time to call his parents more often. His projects didn't just get done, they got done well. And people began asking him, "How do you manage everything so smoothly?" Arian would smile and reply, "I stopped trying to manage time. I started managing my focus." Because in the end, he realized, you can't control time. It moves forward with or without you. But you can control your choices. You can choose what you do, how you do it, and most importantly, why you do it. And once you do that, time becomes your ally, not your enemy. Smart decision-making shapes your life. Arian stood at a crossroads, literally and emotionally. He had two internship offers in hand. One was from a prestigious company with a name everyone recognized. It promised a strong title, a structured path, and a great-looking line on his resume. The other was from a small startup, less money, no brand recognition, but a creative role that excited him and a mentor who saw his potential. He stared at both offers for hours, flipping between excitement and anxiety. What if I choose the wrong one? What if I regret this? What if I fail? That night he couldn't sleep. His mind was loud, but his heart was silent, trapped under the weight of overthinking. The next morning, Arian remembered something he'd written months ago in his personal development notebook. Indecision steals more dreams than bad decisions ever will. He realized then that he didn't have a decision-making problem. He had a fear of mistake problem. So he turned to a method he had once heard in a podcast, the 10-10-10 rule. He sat down with a pen and asked himself, how will I feel about this choice in 10 minutes? How will I feel in 10 months? How will I feel in 10 years? The first answer, nervous no matter what. The second, with the startup he'd probably be learning more, even if it felt risky. The third, if he took the safer option, he might always wonder what could have been. But if he took the bold path, win or fail, he'd grow. And that was his North Star, growth. Arian took the startup offer, not because it was easier, but because it felt right. And guess what? It wasn't perfect. There were chaotic weeks, long hours, and uncertain moments. But he was learning, growing, stretching. He had real responsibility. His ideas were heard. He wasn't just a number. He was a contributor. And over time, that decision became a defining part of his personal story. That experience taught him a deep truth. Every choice shapes your life, not just big ones, but the small ones you make daily. Arian began applying the same decision-making clarity to everything. What he ate, who he spent time with, what habits he built, what projects he said yes to, and even more important, what he said no to. He learned to make decisions faster, not recklessly but with confidence. He stopped asking everyone for opinions and started asking himself better questions. Is this aligned with who I want to become? Am I choosing this out of fear or intention? Will this help me grow, even if it's hard? And when he made mistakes, and yes, there were plenty, he stopped blaming himself. He treated them like data, not drama. Every wrong turn taught him something useful for the road ahead, because Arian realized the truth most people avoid. There's no such thing as a perfect decision. There's only a committed one, and commitment, combined with action, reflection, and courage, was enough to turn any choice into a lesson, and every lesson into a win. Self-discipline is the final key. Arian once believed that the most successful people in the world were the most motivated, that they woke up inspired every day, energized by passion and driven by purpose. But over time, through every habit he built, every challenge he overcame, and every late night he turned into quiet victory, he discovered something much more powerful. Success doesn't belong to the most motivated. It belongs to the most disciplined, and he learned this lesson in the most ordinary way possible, through a morning. One winter, Arian made a promise to himself. He would wake up at 6 a.m. every day to work on his side project, a platform that helped students develop life skills. Day 1 was exciting. Day 2 was tough. Day 3, he hit snooze 5 times, but instead of quitting, Arian sat himself down and asked, "What's stronger right now, my feelings or my future?" That's when the truth sank in. Motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a choice. Feelings are fleeting. But discipline shows up even when you don't feel like it. So Arian created systems. He placed his alarm across the room. He laid out his clothes the night before. He created a playlist that would wake up not just his body, but his mindset. And little by little, the boy who once struggled to commit to anything outside of deadlines became a man who honored promises to himself. That's what discipline really is, not punishment. It's self-respect in action. He learned to write when he didn't feel creative, practice communication even when he was tired, say no to distractions even when everyone else was saying yes. Choose growth over comfort, not once but over and over again. And through it all, something beautiful happened. He stopped needing to wait for the perfect time. He stopped chasing inspiration. He no longer said, "I'll do it when I feel ready," because he knew the truth. You rarely feel ready. You become ready by starting. Discipline became his quiet companion, not loud, not flashy, but deeply dependable. It was the reason he kept going when results were slow. It was the force that got him through days when progress felt invisible. It was the voice in his head that whispered, "Just one more rep, one more page, one more step." In time, people looked at Arian and called him talented, lucky, naturally driven. But only he knew the real story, the late nights, the early mornings, the internal battles he'd won when no one was watching. And as he stood one evening on a small stage, giving a talk to first-year students about personal growth, he ended with a line that had become his truth. Discipline is the bridge between your dreams and your reality. Build it, walk it, and you'll reach places motivation could never carry you. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps LMJ English bring you even more meaningful and life-changing stories. Below are 20 key vocabulary words and phrases that were repeated throughout Arian's journey. Each term is explained clearly in English to help deepen your understanding and usage, perfect for learning through storytelling. Confidence, the feeling or belief that you can rely on yourself. It helps you speak clearly, make decisions, and present yourself with strength. Presence, the impression you create just by being in the room. It's how people feel your energy and confidence even before you speak. Discipline, the ability to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. The key to turning goals into results. Focus, the skill of giving full attention to one task or goal without getting distracted by unimportant things. Growth, the process of becoming better, stronger, or more capable over time, especially through learning and effort. Mindset, your way of thinking about yourself and the world. A positive mindset helps you overcome challenges and stay motivated. Self-respect, treating yourself with dignity by keeping your promises, staying committed, and setting high standards for your actions. Consistency, doing something again and again over time, which builds momentum and lasting results. Influence, the ability to affect what others think, feel, or do, often through communication, storytelling, or presence. Habits, small actions you repeat regularly. Good habits create discipline, while bad habits quietly pull you away from success. Decision-making, the ability to choose wisely, especially under pressure, based on long-term impact rather than short-term feelings. Communication, sharing your thoughts clearly and effectively. Includes speaking, listening, body language, and tone of voice. Personal branding, the way you present yourself to others, online and offline, so they understand your values, skills, and personality. Storytelling, the art of using personal experiences to make your message memorable, emotional, and impactful. Time management, the ability to plan and control how you spend your time so you can achieve what matters most. Productivity, getting meaningful things done, not by staying busy, but by focusing on high-value actions. Automation, using technology, like coding or apps, to complete repetitive tasks, saving time and energy. Investment, using your money or time in ways that bring more value in the future, such as learning, saving, or building something. Self-awareness, knowing your strengths, weaknesses, emotions, and triggers so you can grow intentionally. Opportunity, a chance to grow, improve, or succeed that often comes through preparation and action.